Okay, good afternoon everybody and welcome to the meeting of the Swansea Public Service Board. We'll go to the agenda and first item is apologies for absence. Jeremy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies from Amanda Carr, Nerissa Vaughan, Keith Lloyd, Roger Thomas and Chris Jones.
Okay, thank you very much. They're noted. So on to item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. I haven't had any notifications of any and I can't see anyone raising their hands. So I would assume that there aren't any on this agenda. So on to item 3, which is the minutes of the previous meeting, and that's pages 1 to 3. Again, I haven't been notified of anyone who's not happy with the content, but does anybody have any problems, or we're all happy that they're an accurate record? Okay, that's great. So on then to item 4, which is the terms of reference. Ness, I assume you'll be taking this item for terms of reference.
Thank you. I'll actually just pass over to Leanne because I think all this is that the changes we discussed last time have now been made. So this is just the final complete set that reflects the discussions that we had in a previous meeting. Is that correct, Leanne?
Yes, that's correct, Ness. So yes, it was brought to the previous meeting, Chair. So we just want the group to accept that these would be the ones that we follow going forward.
Lovely. Are we all happy to accept the terms of reference? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll move on then to item 5, which is public question time. Jeremy, have we any questions from the public, please?
No questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you so much. And now on to the main part of the agenda, which is item 6, which are items for discussion, decision and approval, and an update on the 8 steps in the Public Service Board 2023-24 Action Plan. Ness, I'll come to you first.
Thank you. Just to say that we have Tracy here with us this afternoon to give an update on the Developing Swansea's Cultural Offer step, but Tracy can't be with us for the whole meeting, so if we could take that step first and then jump back to number 2, Chair.
Yeah, absolutely happy to do that, and welcome Tracy. So we're going to hand over to you to take us through that step first. So a slight amendment to the running order.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for that.
Oh, Tracy, I don't know if it's me, but we're struggling to hear you.
It is probably me, because I was fiddling with mics and all sorts of things earlier. Can you hear me now?
It's
No,
quite quiet.
have you got a headset plugged in? No. Yeah, okay, we'll give you 2 seconds to pop that headset on. No problem. Joys of working with technology.
How's that?
Still quiet, I'm afraid.
Okay, that's
oh,
better.
That's better. Much better.
Is that better?
Much better. Over to you, Tracy.
Thank you. Yeah, apologies for that. I was in a hybrid meeting earlier where we were all muting and turning off our mics. So, no, thanks. I'm assuming everybody has seen the reports that get circulated. So I'll just give a verbal update, and unless there's any other requests. So step 5 as being towards an integrated cultural offer for the wider area with partners. So we, at the inception of putting together the project plan, we focused on 2 very specific streams of work that had been in dialogue for some time with some partners, but which we hadn't had necessary resources to implement. And those were specifically to establish a creative network and also to expand on, continue, fulfill the terms of our relationship with Sport Wales. And it's worth reflecting on the reason why we wanted to use those 2 as the solid framework for this step is that the creative and cultural network involves such a range of partners and such a range of participants, practitioners, businesses, voluntary sector, third sector, charitable sector, in defining, networking, collaborating, and championing the sort of creative, cultural heritage practice, and the sports partnership as a funded, contractual, strategic relationship with Sports Wales relies on both participation of a number of clubs, leagues, voluntary groups, youth groups, to develop increased participation in sports, physical activity, and that's from it being recreational through to elite, kind of Commonwealth squad, Olympic squad, and everything in between that is the kind of the glue that holds it together, whether that's skate, play, recreation, dance, crafts, hobby work, and so on. So very, very broad spectrum of what an integrated cultural offer is. So we focused on those two strands, but as you may have seen from the last update I provided, we have looked to provide a kind of something to hold all of that together, which is revisiting the need for an up-to-date cultural strategy for the area. And we've done work on that previously, but the PSB now gives that an added advantage, because the partners that we'd worked with previously are both either on this group, consultees to this group, or wider strategic partners as well. So what I'll do going forward, if it's acceptable, is I'll both update on the two key strands of the creative cultural networking, the sports and health provision, as well as how that then begins to be underpinned and positioned within a 5 to 10 year strategy overall. So there's so much in that I think it needs something to hold it all together, really, hence my thinking. So, but in terms of the progress with the two streams of work, so we have secured funding for the Creative Cultural Network and a wider strategic approach from shared prosperity funds. We are fortunate enough to have a cultural and tourism anchor as part of the wider shared prosperity fund. So we have resources to both promote, engage, and facilitate the management of that network as well, so that it'll be much more sustainable. We have been meeting with partners that had already previously expressed an interest, and they were mainly the two universities, with the delivery partner, Regeneration Colleagues, and we basically putting in place at the moment some contracts, some memorandum of understanding, ways of working as to what we're going to do together and how we're then going to broadcast that, to make sure that we are both sort of clear to those we want to sign up to the network about what the network is, what it will achieve, who it's for, and what the benefits of being part of it will be. So that work is currently in progress. With the second strand, so we're in, as I said, we've got the relationship with Sports Wales. We're delivering an agreed funded programme with them, but we're also doing that in partnership with a number of community groups, as well as the sort of community providers, sports clubs, and working with Us Girls, which is targeting low participation in some sports by girls, as well as Swim Wales, and delivering on the key objectives of Sports Wales regional model. So in terms of update, we are basically fulfilling the terms of that agreement. They are giving us the thumbs up, and we're coming up to a refresh period for our creating an active and healthy Swansea strategy as well. That can sit comfortably within the wider cultural strategy, and there will be room and space within a sort of more of an overarching document to pin together a sports, recreation, leisure offer with a creative cultural participation offer. So at the moment, it's not it's nowhere near being a piece of work that's anywhere near completion. What we aim to do is get the MOUs agreed, the framework of how we're going to work and who's going to do what, who's going to be delivering, who's going to be an institutional partner, and who's going to be a sort of community third sector partner. And at that stage, I'd be very, very grateful for representatives of the PSB to sit on that working group, steering group, taking that forward and shaping that. I think it's probably as much as I can update for today. There will be some websites, networking events to be established as part of those things I've updated on as well. So there'll be opportunity in the next couple of months to kind of get your teeth stuck into things as well. So just if that's coming along just to see what's happening or wanting to take an active role as well. So
thank you so much, Tracy. That's great. I'll open it up. Does anyone have any questions for Tracy on this step and the progress made? No. Thank you very much for attending today and updating us. It's very positive to see the progress so far. I can see Ness has indicated as well. Ness, you're on mute. Sorry, Ness.
I'm on mute. Sorry about that. Just to say thank you, Tracy. As Andrea said, good progress being made. I guess the question was whether you were looking for any expressions of interest in PSB partners at this point, or if that's some point further down the road.
I think it's imminent. So from previous correspondence, I've either worked directly with or had some correspondence with most of the people on the PSB at some point. So I think we definitely need health input. We have the university's input. We definitely will need at least some level of engagement, whether that is per specific action that we're looking at delivering, or whether that's as part of a steering group. I think once we've got a really clear work plan in place in terms of framework, what kind of governance that needs, who's leading what, then I think I'll put the invitation out more widely, because sometimes you think you know what you need and want, and then somebody brings something completely fresh to the table. So I'm really open to seeing how that shapes up going forward. But I would just say there will be, as we move towards that integrated cultural strategy, there's going to be, the need for quite widespread consultation. So there's a real clear role there to help and to stimulate, and then to help crunch into achievable action plans as well, because I think we're all agreed we don't want a strategy without a deliverable action plan. So we know where we want to be in 5 years' time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Exactly what we're aiming for with these steps, is to have that plan laid out and to show that we're meeting the milestones. So that fits in very well with the other steps as well, and what we're trying to achieve as a public service board. And I think I'm sure Leanne will be able, if you need her, to assist in terms of circulating when you're ready for more engagement and involvement from PSB partners. We can, if it's easier for you, I'm sure Leanne wouldn't mind being a conduit to send out that call for people to get involved.
Okay, no, that'd be really great. Thank you.
Leanne's given a thumbs up, so that's wonderful. Thank you very much, Tracy. Okay, so we'll move on then to the next step, which is transforming early years services across Swansea. So I believe that's Karen was the lead for that step. Are you with us, Karen?
I'm here. Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
Okay, great. Over to you, Karen.
Thanks very much. I've got my colleague Gary Mahoney, who's here as well, and we have got a short presentation that we're going to put up. So I was just going to introduce it and then hand over to Gary, if that's acceptable.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, over to you both.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, so the health board is the strategic lead for this area, early years, but this is clearly an area that cuts across a whole range of statutory partners, particularly working with the local authority and education in this really important space. So I suppose in terms of our action plan, which is attached to the agenda, you can see where we're mainly green and amber in where we said we'd get to. Our action plan is about getting leadership, which I think we've got now with the health board leading the strategic programme quite clearly. The next step was about us getting alignment, so making sure that the wellbeing plan objectives align to the work that's been going on for many years in this early years transformation space. There's a well-established integration forum regionally that cuts across Newport, Talbot and Swansea. And what we've been doing in this recent period is making sure the terms of reference of that group, which is now chaired by a member of the health board within my team, so the direct link back to me, that we've got that terms of reference actually delivering against the wellbeing objectives. So that's been a clear thing, and that's been going through the local arrangements in each local authority, because this is a regional piece of work. I just want to emphasise that. Then the next piece of work is around developing some performance measures. So we want leadership, we want alignment, then we want to be able to measure what we're doing. And the aim then is to eventually develop an early years regional strategy to drive our direction across the region. And that's being informed at the moment by the work of the that's happening regionally around the maturity matrix for maternity and early years. And Gary's just going to talk about some of the detail and put up a couple of slides to show us a bit more detail. So over to you, Gary, please. Thanks.
Okay, thanks. Oh, there's a hand up there.
Apologies, Gary, before you come in. I
Sorry.
think I can anticipate what Jeremy's question is going to be.
Yeah, is it bilingual presentation?
Yeah, bilingual, yes.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you.
Thank you.
We both breathed a sigh of relief at that point. Gary, over to you.
Okay, I'll just begin sharing the screen if that's okay. And I just double check that because I can't see anybody. Okay, yeah. So thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Karen, yeah, this is a very brief presentation just to update where we're at. So obviously, looking at the plan, the working together to improve wellbeing in Swansea, focusing on the early years and specifically transformation in early years. So we've been undertaking a number of exploration activities over the past few years, looking at the early years system. This is in conjunction working very closely with Welsh Government, I hasten to add, and also our regional partners. We've undertaken a review of the early years services from conception to 7. We've worked with the Early Intervention Foundation on the early years maternity maturity matrix to understand how integrated our systems are. And we have a specific Swansea report into that with a number of recommendations. We've also been working for a number of years, as Karen mentioned, on the integration of our early years systems, and we have independent evaluation, which I'm more than happy to circulate to members, along with the maternity maturity matrix, so people can see our progress, make those available. And part of our work moving forward will be to align those separate reports along with some national work and working with Public Health Wales within our own health board to identify and bring those plans together. Okay, so what has been recognised in all of these reports is that we have a strong local commitment in Swansea, and that whilst early childhood systems are complex, they do involve many different stakeholders, services and organisations from across a variety of services: education, childcare, health, family support, and training and employment, just to name but a few. It is really important that we have an effective system for children and families to navigate these early years support. And it can be a really changing time and a challenging time for parents, specifically at the moment as well, with different pressures like cost of living rise. On young families, it can be really challenging. So our support structures must be integrated to support them. And the group that we've set up is hoping to lead on that and align that with our wellbeing objectives, leading change and delivering effective support, and continue to learn from progress. So our Swansea Bay Early Years Integration Board is the board that we've set up to manage and support the work of the PSB, both in Swansea and across our neighbouring partners as well, so within the health board, recognising that our Swansea Bay University Health Board is a key player within this strategy and the development of this strategy, but they work across the region with our partners in need. So any strategies must be aligned with across the patches where possible. So as I mentioned, we've had some evaluation done into our pilot programs, and also which we've got a number across Swansea. So the evaluation has identified a need to focus on the bigger picture of change, specifically in relation to leadership and accountability, as Karen mentioned, and that's a big piece of our work, and making sure that we are aligned with our public service boards and the objectives of our wellbeing plans. This is a key focus for us as we move forward. So transformation. So there's some of the transformation that has been happening over the past few years, and is ongoing, and it is really key. We've been testing a number of different service delivery methods and models within Swansea, looking at different ways of working with health visiting, speech and language support, and family support services as well across Swansea, and within and without Flying Start areas. So targeting a universal proportionalism model, thinking about the Marmot review and some of the language that comes out of that. So we are looking at all early years services that interact with families from conception to 7. Some of the recent transformation that's happened within the local authority, for example, would be, the Swansea Council Early Years Early Help Family Support Services. So they've been reconfigured into the hub model, and they now sit within the early help hubs across the 5 localities, and cluster areas across Swansea. The idea and the philosophy behind that is helping to deliver community services within the community, making it easy for access, understanding the need of the local population, and recognizing that our Swansea population, the need can be very different from one side of Swansea to the other, and for different demographics within that. We're looking currently at the expansion of early years provision, specifically the rollout of Welsh Government childcare for 2-year-olds. That's an ongoing transformation that's happening right now, and perhaps we could update further on that in a future meeting, or within the next highlight report. There is a significant transformation of the way we support families across Swansea happening right now, with the rollout of that expansion for childcare for more and more 2-year-olds, with a vision that all 2-year-olds at some point will be able to all parents with 2-year-olds will be able to access that. We've also worked, again, we looked at we commissioned a piece of research into the need for an early years front door, recognizing that we already had the single point of contact. So again, that transformation that needed to happen was behind the scenes to make sure our services were really aligned to support that entry point into services and support for families. And one of the really key transformation projects happening in Swansea at the moment, which is a really great example of co-production, is within maternity services. So as 2 lay chairs are in charge of the Swansea Bay Maternity Voices Partnership, which is a partnership that listens and involves in a really coordinated and effective way recent mums over the past 5 years, with a view to helping the transformation of maternity services. So recognizing that transformation within early years is ongoing, and it's been really successful, and there's been loads of great work happening over the years. And the key for us is to make sure the PSP, the Public Service Board, then is really aware of all this transformation and support our wellbeing objective. Okay, so again, I mentioned we've been testing a number of projects. So there's an ongoing piece of work at the moment for us to continue to need to understand and communicate the benefits and impact from our Pathfinder projects to inform future strategy and decision making, and that's a real focus for our work in terms of helping our transformation journey over the coming months. Really important to us as well is learning from others. So the Cwmtaf, we've done some work recently with Cwmtaf Morgannwg Health Board. So their early years transformation, there's a conference recently, but also they spoke about their our strategic Swansea Bay Early Years Integration Board on Monday just gone, actually, around their transformation journey, specifically in relation to Flying Start and the way that they now commission Flying Start health visiting services in a really transformative way. So it's really important to us to understand the national agenda, link into the the statutory requirements behind programs like Flying Start, but also how different local authorities and different public service boards are really looking at the transformation of some of these services in a really proactive way. So again, drawing on the learning from across Wales is really important to our network, and that's a key focus for us moving forward.
Thank you, Gary, and thank you, Carmen. Very interested and really great to see so much going on. Any questions from our members on screen today? No questions on that step, but thank you very much for the overview. And yes, we look forward to further updates at future meetings, so really appreciate that. So we're going to move on then to the next step, which is building on Swansea as a human rights city. And so it's over to Ness Young and Adele Dunstan. Over to you both.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll just make a brief introduction. So you can see from the papers in your pack that the two actions under building a human rights city are actually amber at the moment, and that is due to a sort of delay at the start of the year. Well, the first action was to work with stakeholders to develop our action plan for the next steps that we're taking to take the human rights city forward. And it was really difficult to get a date in the diary where all members who we wanted to be present at that event could attend. So that was delayed until June, which is really what's caused the kind of knock-on impact to the timeline. So there is progress being made, and Adele is going to share that with us now. We had an excellent event in June, and a lot of work has been happening since then, and we are on track to have an action plan ready certainly before the end of the calendar year. But Adele's here and she can give you a bit more information on the key points that came through the engagement event and where we are with the stakeholder panel, and I'll come back and pick up at the end. Over to you, Adele.
Hi, thank you, Ness, and thank you, Chair. I also have a couple of slides of a presentation which are also bilingual. So I'll just get it up on screen. Loading. Okay.
Yeah, lovely.
Oh, got it. Lovely. Okay, so just to a quick slide here, just as a introduction and just to recap. So after 18 months of action, we all declared Swansea a human rights city in December 2022. So following this announcement, as Nessa just explained, we hosted an action plan engagement event in June to ensure that we heard from the people that we previously engaged with, people with lived experiences, young people, as well as businesses and third sector leaders, to ensure that they all had a say in the development of this action plan. So the event was held on the 16th of June. 103 people attended on the day. The event did hit capacity very early on, and we had a waiting list for people who wanted to attend. So to ensure that we captured their views, we released a survey asking the same questions. And the report that you have received in your agenda pack are the results of the event and the survey combined. So at the event, the first session of the event, we had two presentations which were delivered by Katie Spendiff, who is the Senior Policy Manager of Children's Rights at Welsh Government. And her presentations were on what is a human rights-based approach and then the principles in practice, which were both based on a guide for organisations that we developed as a Human Rights City steering group. So Katie asked the participants, what can you do to further support Swansea being a human rights city? And we had a short feedback session on the day, asking each table to give an example. So then so the afternoon session, then we had roundtable discussions on the priorities. So the 3 questions that were asked are: what are the main issues? What are the potential actions? And what does success look like for each priority? In the report that you have received, responses have been categorised into reoccurring themes for each question under each priority, and then further analysis has taken place on the top 3 themes for each question. So a number of the responses did have more than one theme in them, and so therefore where applicable, the one response was categorised into more than one theme. So I'm going to share with you now some of the results of the main issues of under each priority. So for our first priority, which is tackling poverty, the largest theme at 34% said cost of living crisis. A number of the responses used that phrase directly, while others were indirect. One example of the comments recognise that people who have just about managed before and are not entitled to benefits, it is an issue now. The second largest theme identified was in relation to information and knowledge at 25%. Some responses in this category told us people don't know where to go for support at the beginning of personal financial issues, and people don't know how to manage money and cook from scratch. Also mentioned in this category was the perceived lack of ability for support services to signpost to each other. And the third top theme we have here then is jobs and wages. That was at 10%. Some of the issues talked about here expressed the need to encourage businesses to come to Swansea to provide good jobs, to wages not matching inflation, and the need to support people to get back into work. So our second priority then is vulnerable children and families. So 36% cited lack of support as a main issue. So the responses here included people not knowing where to go for support, again, and not enough preventative services being available. 12% said lack of information and knowledge. This includes having a definition about vulnerability and people knowing where to go when they need support before they hit crisis point. And also the perception around receiving support services and the fact that the services are there to help families and not like just take children away. So the third largest theme identified here at 11% cited education in schools. Participants told us simply that education needs to improve in schools around healthy relationships, and children who are excluded or had reduced timetable because of their behaviour were not having their right to education realised. So then our third priority is tackling discrimination, and as we all know, it is a vast and complex topic that encompasses all aspects of social, political and cultural life, and this was evidenced in the responses that we received to this question. So over 50% of the comments cited media and negative stories as an issue. 22% said lack of awareness. The comments here ranged from a lack of general understanding and information to then more detailed comments where participants would express a lack of awareness of a certain protected characteristic, which would lead to discrimination. So the third largest theme identified in this answer was support services at 10%. Now all of the comments categorised into this theme made reference to a certain protected characteristic and the lack of services to support them. So our next priority then is domestic abuse and violence. So when asked what are the main issues for this priority, the largest theme identified was the lack of awareness, again at 29%. Participants told us that there is a lack of awareness of what the different forms of abuse can be and that it can happen to any gender. The second largest theme identified here was support services and resources at 20%. A large proportion of these comments said that support services are not aimed enough at men or the LGBTQ+ community, and often refuges are full, and so there was no escape for victims. The third largest theme identified here was lack of reporting at 9%, mainly because of the fear of not being believed, and subsequently then the lack of prosecutions. The lack of policing within domestic abuse and violence was also identified within this theme. And then our final priority here is human rights awareness. So the largest theme identified here was the lack of awareness and knowledge at 53%. Participants told us that people lack a basic understanding and respect of human rights and why they are important to everyone, and not knowing what to do if your human rights aren't being met. Answers that have been categorized into this theme also acknowledge that children are taught about children's rights in school, and Swansea is quite well known for it in Wales, but then not about the larger picture of human rights, and questioned how can we increase the knowledge within the adult population. The second largest theme identified was the need to improve individual rights at 15%. The answers in this theme cited a general need for improving the rights of individuals, and then to more specific mention of certain rights. For example, the need to improve the right to family life and children with disabilities not having their rights realised. And then the third largest theme here then at 13% was misinformation and misconception. We were told that media has an influence in this when they attack certain groups of people, and also a general feeling that it is a fad and not something tangible that people can relate to, and that creates an issue. So now on to kind of the next steps and where we are currently. So as a council, we have drafted a plan on a page as to how we will put human rights at the heart of our decision making. And this is using a human rights based approach, which is participation, empowerment, embedding, accountability and non-discrimination. And the next thing we are working on is an action plan to address the priorities using the information from the engagement report. So we are currently meeting with relevant officers within the council, ensuring that all the information from this report feeds into new and developing strategies, policies and action plans, and also to establish work that is already happening to address the main issues and potential actions under each priority. And all of the members of the Human Rights City Steering Group are doing the same piece of work. So the plan on the page and the action plan for the priorities will sit together and will be ready to publish on the 10th of December this year, which will be 1 year since we've all declared Human Rights City. It's Human Rights Day, and also it is 75 years to the day that the signing of the United Nations Declaration of Human Rights was made. So then also, which is a step in the plan, we will be developing a stakeholder panel where all interested parties can attend an annual meeting where we will share our progress within our human rights work, and attendees can ask us questions on the work. And the Human Rights City Steering Group continues to raise awareness and support events with regards to our human rights, where we share our progress and distribute our guides. And also training with the British Institute of Human Rights is also ongoing, and our next session is on the 15th of November, which anyone from the PSB organisations can also attend, and there's a number of council officers attending. And that's my update, so I'll hand back to you, Ness.
Thank you, Adele, and thanks for taking us through, because I think, you know, all the PSB members are signatories to the Human Rights Declaration, and so I don't know whether all members on the call will be aware, but within your organisations you are working up the action plans that Adele has referred to, and hopefully the feedback from the event that we held that Adele's talked us through is helping to inform those action plans in each individual organisation. So it is later than we hoped. I think we had hoped that we'd have those action plans in place by July, but as I say, we were delayed at the start of the financial year. But as such, it's important that we try and get those plans in place to be able to publish on the 10th of December. And really exciting to see that the event is kind of aligned with Human Rights Day and also that 75th anniversary. I think one of the questions that I had for the PSB is regard to the stakeholder panels. So this proposal within the STEP is that there is this panel that we establish to help ensure that we are all collectively still delivering and developing plans that are really relevant and pertinent to the individuals that we're trying to support. And it struck me that we've previously had a conversation about the Partnership Forum for the PSB, which is a very wide network of organisations and individuals, and to whether or not, therefore, there might be something to be able to combine the two. And so at our annual Partnership Forum event, we could have a specific session on Human Rights City. And that might involve extending the invitation perhaps slightly further, but it would be a good way of linking the work of the steering group that's supporting this PSB directly to the work of the PSB. So grateful for thoughts on that suggestion.
Thank you, Ness. Well, I know I would certainly be in favour of that suggestion. It seems like a good idea to take that opportunity to involve the wider Partnership Forum and a good topic to add to our annual meeting with them. So yeah, I'm really fully supportive of that. And I can see Karen on screen is also not in agreement. So I'll open it up to any comments or questions from the rest of the members on the call. No, I can't see any questions, but obviously you've put that request out for PSB partner involvement and also to engage in terms of individual organisations' action plans in terms of moving towards a human rights city. So thank you, Adele, for a comprehensive presentation and an update on work to date. And thanks also to Ness. So we'll move on then to the next step, which is working towards Swansea's net zero target and nature recovery. But before we go into that step, can I just please place on record my thanks to Martin Evans from NRW, who has retired and has been a part of this PSB for a number of years, but also to welcome Howell Manley from NRW today to this first meeting. So welcome, Howell. But for this next step, I understand Jane Richmond's going to take us through the updates today. So Jane, over to you.
Chair, if I could just come in quickly. Yeah. Extend the thanks for the welcome, and I hope I continue to support the enthusiasm of the work of the PSB as Martin has for a number of years. It does take me back a bit because I did once sit on the local service board as a predecessor body and organisation. So that just a few words in terms of climate nature emergency. You know, as an organisation, it's part of our key corporate plan outcomes for now until 2030. You know, tackling nature emergency, tackling the climate change, and also kind of tackling environmental pollution. So the work of the group and the work taken forward by Jane and Helen Gray is really paramount to driving that agenda forward from a local perspective. And I'm very grateful Jane is prepared to run through the actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Howell. So over to you, Jane.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't have a presentation. I'm just going to update verbally. So on our action plan, there are two streams of work for this step. The first being mapping the arrangements in place with the climate signatories organisations to tackle climate change and nature recovery in the city and county of Swansea, and to build capacity and to share good practice and innovation. This so what the climate signatories have done when they agreed to take on this step for PSB was to form 2 working groups. The working group for that step, for the mapping exercise, has been taken on by Helen Gray from Natural Resources Wales. The scope has been agreed with the climate signatories, and the main survey questions have been looked at and been commented on and have gone for translation. This will go onto Microsoft Teams form survey, and that should be going out fairly soon, as I understand it. There will be one that will go to the climate signatories and larger organisations within Swansea, and then there will be a lighter touch one that will go to the environment sector within the city and county, just to get a greater understanding of the wider landscape regarding these 2 areas of work. Everything is on green. You'll see in your pack on that. Then the second piece of work is to produce an independent adaptation and mitigation strategy for Swansea. And I am chairing the working group for that piece of work. And earlier this year, we were successful in achieving shared prosperity funding to enable us to procure a contractor to help us draw up a strategy. So what we've been doing in preparation for that, and we should hopefully have something to go to sell to Wales shortly, which I'll go into in a moment. We have been, first of all, the working group looked at the current climate change risk assessment for Wales. And the opportunities within that. So the risks are given a score of urgency, with more action needed, further investigation, sustaining current action, or a watching brief. And there are 63 risk assessments for Wales, categorised into natural environment and assets, infrastructure, health, communities and the built environment, business and industry, and then international dimensions. So we've used that to help inform us as a working group, and to start discussions with the wider signatories on where we can see particular issues for Swansea. Some may not be as relevant, some will be more so, because we are obviously a coastal city. Then very timely for us, the Climate Change Committee produced an adaptation monitoring framework. So all councils across the UK are being encouraged to have an adaptation and mitigation strategy for climate change. And they have produced a framework which has now been adopted by Wales, and that it takes you through a framework on how to put together your strategy, what you need to actually consider, and how to monitor progress. So obviously we were quite grateful for that piece to come to light, and we've been looking at that, and particularly looking at things like monitoring maps. So they produce a series of monitoring maps which look at things like what the overall goal would be, how to get to those required outcomes, what the enablers are, what policies should be identified, or some of the policies that may be appropriate to be identified within that process, as well as all the contextual factors. So there are quite a number of these maps. I think there's 13 all in all. And it is quite comprehensive. So it looks through nature, working on the land and sea, food security, water supply, energy, telecommunications and ICT, transport, towns and cities in the urban environment, buildings, health, community preparedness and response, business and finance. So those have been really useful in enabling us to start drawing up a scope. So at the moment, the climate signatories group are looking at producing a spreadsheet of all the different partner organisations and stakeholders policies and strategies that are already in place, and identifying key service areas or departments that we would need to engage with within those organisations. So that would include the Health Board, NIW, both the universities, Swansea BID, various other groups within that we are engaging with. And so we're trying to get a comprehensive spreadsheet together of all of those policies and strategies, and the key people to engage with as part of the preparation towards actually engaging and commissioning a consultant to help us with this piece of work. So we've come up with some aims and objectives, which I have shared, and the aims and objectives just briefly. So we have two potential aims at the moment, very, very similar, but significant difference within them, but the main one that we are favouring at the moment is to develop a climate change mitigation and adaptation strategy that provides a just and equitable transition to net zero for all citizens in Swansea, creating a livable future with a nature-rich environment and health and well-being for all at its heart. And the main objectives are to develop a strategy that identifies the key priorities for collaboration across Swansea region for both mitigation and adaptation. And one of the reasons that we put in the key priorities here is we have been learning from other authorities in Wales and across the UK, where they they had funding or were able to put a strategy together, and then there was a delay in the next phase of action planning because they hadn't had the full key priorities identified and everything else. So we've tried to learn very much from the from where other people have from what other authorities have done. The other objectives would be to develop a pathway to net zero, develop mechanisms that will prevent something called lock-in, which is something that is mentioned in the Climate Change Committee's framework for adaptation, which is all about making sure that we don't put things in place that we can't change or adapt as situations may change. Highlight the key stakeholders and identify the priorities, and that is where the work that Helen Gray is leading on is going to be key to this. And to understand the future opportunities, and also to understand the cost of not adapting and mitigating and the potential impact on Swansea and its place within the wider region. So we are looking at understanding the current status of mitigation and adaptation within the climate signatories organisations. We're looking at benchmarking best practice. We are intending to undertake a series of workshops with citizens and business across the whole of the Swansea region, as well as the key stakeholders within the signatory organisations and people that they have identified within their organisations. So, for instance, with Swansea Council, that would be those leading on our LDP, among others. And then developing a strategy document for the Swansea region with the key priorities outlined, and then that would enable us to draw up a full action plan that we would then intend to develop from that. We're looking at dividing Swansea into different geographical regions for being able to run these workshops. So we're looking at rural areas and urban fringe, and trying to find looking at whether they are the commonalities between different areas, so that we can actually hopefully make it as relevant to those people that we're talking to as possible. We will be looking very much at being to key partners within PSB to help us identify groups that we may need to speak to throughout this process. we have just put out it's called a market engagement questionnaire. So we have, as I say, our aims and objectives, but before we actually put them in stone, as it were, ready to go out to sell to Wales, we thought we would have a look to see what the consultants that may have worked on things like strategies like this in the past may have to contribute at this stage, so that we can adapt and change our scope if necessary. We want to be able to get as much as we possibly can out of the money that we have available to us through SPF. We know that this is potentially could be a once in a lifetime opportunity to be able to do this. So we really want to get this right. One of the things that we will be doing is ensuring that we provide the contractor, whoever wins the contract, with as much information when they start as we can gather ourselves, so that there is no need for them to be using their time that we are paying for to do that. We will also be, as I say, undertaking workshops. So we're looking at potentially doing up to 10 workshops across Swansea over next year. So the timescale at the moment is that this market engagement questionnaire will be out until the 31st of October. Then the working group will assess any of the responses to that and decide whether we need to actually change any of the scope as is at the moment. And then on the 13th of November, the full tender will be going out, and that has to stay out for 28 days. So we are then intending to hopefully have enough of a response to have our top 3 to interview, and to then commission the contractor first thing in the new year, with the idea that they would be working on this and a strategy to be presented to PSB in the autumn winter of next year. So that's where we've got to at the moment. Obviously it will continue. Okay.
Yeah, no problem. I've got a message in the chat. Welcome to Keith Reid, who is running slightly late. I've got a question from Ness. Over to you, Ness.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Jane. It's more of a comment, really, that this is, clearly a really big strategic piece of work for the PSB. It's really exciting, and to have so many organisations, part of the signatories group and helping to take it forward. I guess in terms of that tender process, our next PSB meeting, I think, is the 11th of January, which might just be too soon, but maybe you may be in a position to update us verbally on that a contract award. But as Andrea said earlier, if there's anything you need in terms of coordination or wanting to reach out to PSB members, I'm sure Leanne is happy to help facilitate that with you as and when required during the next few months. So thanks ever so much, Jane. That was a really interesting update.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ness. And we've had another thumbs up from Leanne on that. So thank you so much, Jane, for the update. So we'll move on now. Just open up any further questions. No, okay, lovely. So we'll move on then to making Swansea safer, more cohesive and prosperous. We have with us Amy Richmond-Jones and also Richard Felton. And so over to you for this step regarding an update. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, obviously, I know it's been noted, but Roger gives his apologies for not being able to give this update in person. I have a quick verbal update to give in regards to the step 4. There's 3 main actions within this work group, and the first one has been completed, and that was in and around a pop-up community village, which was set up in Castle Gardens in Swansea in June of this year. It coincided with the Welsh Firefighter Fitness Challenge that was ongoing within the sort of fountain area. It gave an opportunity for partners in and around the main sort of community themes to set up and engage with members of Swansea. The event afforded that engagement on a variety of subjects and was well attended, obviously given its location, by a lot of footfall and members of the public. That offer was taken up by a number of organisations. The Fire and Rescue Services, obviously we were there, the RNLI, South Wales Police and Go Safe, Long Life Learning Services, Swansea Neighbourhood Watch Association, SCVS, WAST, Welsh Ambulance Service, the Cohesive Community Team from Swansea Council, Ageing Well, Wales Safer Communities Network, and the local area coordination, as well as the CMET Evolve team and other members of Swansea Council. From an organisational point of view, from the Fire Rescue Service, it was very successful in spreading a number of key messages about keeping people safe, and it resulted in 55 sort of onward requests and referrals to further work for our services in and around sort of home fire safety. Other feedback from partners was very similar about the onward engagement and referrals that were received. This work did undertake a sort of formal sort of feedback session, and how we can build and better take advantage of this opportunity in the future. A number of key learning points were taken from this evaluation event. Many organisations that weren't present felt like they didn't have enough resources in order to undertake that type of front community engagement, which was interesting, and we'll take feedback on that. And others cited sort of staffing issues being the main reason why they can't attend, given the event was a Saturday and they work Monday to Friday 9 till 5. So on top of the other positive feedback that we had, that was some of the main sort of takeaways that we got from that action and that event. The second action is ongoing and is due to take place on the 17th of November. It was about hosting a community event which is agreed this year to be centred around safeguarding, and it coincides with Safeguarding Week in November. And the aim of this is to share those key messages and learning opportunities between partner agencies, focusing as well on practitioners from all other individual organisations, about how we can build obviously safer and stronger communities in and around Swansea. It's going to be titled Safeguarding Swansea, Building Safer and Strong Communities, and it's going to be held in the Swansea.com stadium. Invites and Eventbrite notifications have been sent out to all PSP partners and organisations in and around that work area. It's hoping, it will bring together a diverse range of those organisations, and its aim is to sort of discuss ways to improve the safeguarding across Swansea. We've got some keynote speakers in around the Director of Social Services, David Howes. There's Mark Brace from from Wales Safer Communities, and Dave Howes from South Wales Police. Along that, there'll be a workshop style event being taken place, and topics of mutual interest across all organisations in and around contextual safeguarding and hoarding will be undertaken. It's going to allow some networking space as well for representatives from a range of partners to share information and best practice. And again, that's taking part on the 17th of November. The last action around the step is about continuing and hosting a Walking in Our Shoes event. This is taking place next week. It is on the 17th of October, and we're hosting that in our training facility in Earlswood, Jersey Marine. And the event is sort of focusing on three principal areas in and around response, prevention and protection. The event is going to be of particular interest to practitioners that operate within the community safety world, and it's planning on building messages around building control, which is the protection element, prevention, some of the key work areas within community safety, and then from a fire service point of view, some of the operational response elements that we do. The event is starting at 10 o'clock next week, and again, invites will be given out to all PSB partners as well as members of the scrutiny committee that if they would like to attend. And that is about the update, if that's okay, Chair.
That's great. Thank you very much, Richard. Opening it up for questions. I've got Ness.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Hi, Richard. Thank you for that update. I just wondered, have you had a good response rate? Are you expecting good attendance next weekend in November, or do we as at PSB partners need to G people up a bit?
I don't have specific numbers unless Amy can help me out, but it is certainly the event in November. The Eventbrite has gone out and there has been a good response. However, we would always welcome more for the event in November. Next week's event, again, I believe we've got a good uptake, but if there are any other people within the practitioner world certainly that would like to attend next week, then I think Amy has shared the invite in the chat, but I can get back to you with specific numbers if you need them.
Thanks. No need for specific numbers, but I think probably worth us all as PSB members just highlighting it within our own organisations to maximise the opportunity for sharing that learning and attending that safeguarding event.
Thanks, Ness. Karen?
Thanks. Yeah, so we've had an approach to be part of the event, and we're considering that at the moment in the health board. So there we will be represented, and we've been asked to contribute as well.
Lovely, thank you, Karen. And I think I sense we're volunteering Leanne again to circulate any information that you have in terms of expressing interests. So I'm sure Leanne will be happy to help do that. Okay, thank you very much, Richard. So I'm going to go collectively to the last 3 steps, which are steps 6, 7, and 8. You have them in the agenda, so I won't read through them. I'm going to hand over to you, Ness.
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, as these 3 steps are kind of different from the others. The others are very much focused on our residents, our citizens, our communities, whereas these 3 are cross-cutting objectives which relate more to the way in which we work as collectively as a PSB, and how we work with other partnerships and how we work within the PSB as a whole in terms of governance, data management, and also performance management. And so I'm the strategic lead for all 3 steps, but I'm also conscious of time. So I'm going to invite Richard Rowlands, who is our corporate performance and policy manager within the council as the operational lead, to just take us through an update on all 3 of those, a whistle-stop tour, if you will. But just to say, all of them are currently have a RAG status of green at the end of Q2. Thanks, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, I'll take you through as quickly as I can. So the first step, step 6, from the wellbeing plan to influence and connect with other governance partnerships across the Swansea Bay region, which you can see on page 72 of your papers. That's really derived from the premise that partnerships and the PSB, in order for them to be successful, they need to have clear and strong governance with clear lines of accountability as well. The partnership landscape in Wales is complex, so we have to try and avoid the trap of having too many partnerships or more partnerships than are needed, which might lead to duplication, too many meetings that don't add any value, particularly when there are organisations that have to attend multiple partnerships in a given region. Because many public services and third sector partners are engaged in several partnerships covering a range of issues, what we want to see from this step is to pull together a register of local partnerships that are involved in one way or another within the areas of work covered by the PSB. And once we have that, we can then look for opportunities to look for ways to simplify and streamline and rationalize and align the partnership landscape where possible, in order to try and improve the effectiveness and the efficiency of the partnerships and also make better use of resources. So the hope is that we will not only alleviate unnecessary complexity and duplication of activity, but we can also ensure that the partnerships are better connected, that the work is joined up, and that there is improved visibility about work that is happening elsewhere, so that we have a full picture across the partnerships and the outcomes that we're trying to achieve. So the first part of this step has been to map the regional partnership landscape. We have gathered some initial information on the different partnerships in Swansea, including as well things like terms of reference, meeting frequency and membership. A table has been populated with this information, which is what you can see in your papers, starting on page 74. It's just a snapshot of that. But from this information, we expect then to produce a partnership map, which we hope then will allow us to see where there are opportunities then for joining things up better or reducing duplication, or where there might be some gaps to fill or opportunities for improving what's already there. It'll also be useful, I think, as a source to refer to should any new work arise, to see if it already fits into the existing partnership landscape or whether an existing partnership can deliver the outcome that's required. So the next steps for this really, it will be to involve partner representatives in order to finalize the information, clarify any queries, close any gaps, ensure that everything that we've collected there is accurate and comprehensive, and then we can discuss the best way to present that information in the most meaningful and the most simple way, and in a way then that provides us with that comprehensive picture of partnerships across the region that we're after. And I think it'll also be a useful start point as well as a source document for the next action in this step, when the PSB chair will then look to meet with other partnership chairs to discuss the PSB wellbeing plan and look for opportunities to collaborate where that adds value and can help achieve the PSB's outcomes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Richard. Any comments or questions from anyone? No? Okay, thank you very much for that update. So this will take us now to item 7, which is the, let me just put the agenda, the Walking in Our Shoes event on the 17th of October 2023. So Amy or Richard, are you giving a verbal update on this one?
Yeah, apologies. I think I went into that during my update as well. So that's the event next week.
Is there anything to add, Richard?
No, apologies. Sorry.
No, so it's probably best for me to add that this is the first Walking in Our Shoes event that Mid and West Wales Fire and Rescue Service have kindly agreed to host. And clearly the plan is that other partners will hold similar events. So what I would suggest is when we attend the event on the 17th, prior to that, it might be good for partners to start thinking about who's going to go next. So just putting that out there so that anyone that's interested in volunteering to go second can do so. Ness?
Thanks, Chair. Just to say, I think we skipped over the last 2 steps. Step 7. No, don't worry. Step 7 and step 8. So Richard can probably just, for completeness for the minutes, just update us on each of those. Noting that there's only a couple of minutes left, so I'm sure he will be brief.
Thank you, Richard. Over to you.
Yeah, no problem. So step 7 really is about looking to improve data quality and the accessibility of data across the region. What we're trying to do for this step really is to identify data commonalities and gaps in both the PSB's wellbeing assessment and the Regional Partnership Board's population needs assessment, both of which are of interest to the PSB and RPB. It's also about reviewing the scope for sharing data and to work towards improved alignment between the wellbeing assessment and the population needs assessment. And that's a step which really came from Swansea PSB's action plan, but I think there's also wider potential benefits as well for Neath Talbot, the RPB and the other partners as well. So there have been some initial meetings to discuss this. The last meeting that took place was on the 27th of September. At that meeting there was a group that discussed the work that had been undertaken so far by Swansea Council on developing population measures, which I'll talk about briefly in the next step, but also that could be used as well for looking for ways and means in which we can close these data gaps between the two different assessments, and also there were also discussions in terms of how that information can be shared between the partners as well. There will be a further meeting soon, but also in terms of the second element of this around a data sharing portal, there is some national developments on that where Data Cymru is looking at a potential data portal for PSBs. There has been a presentation on it, but the work is in its early stages at the moment, but it may well lead to a standardized all Wales approach for sharing data. We would need to look to see whether or not there is any potential for including local priorities and measures. But having said that, the group has decided to track that particular piece of work and see if it has any potential to help with this particular step. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. Does anyone have any questions on step 7? No. Okay, so that takes us, sorry for overlooking it, to the final step, which is the develop Swansea Public Service Board performance management arrangements, which measure and monitor the PSB's progress. Back to you, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, there's two elements to this really in terms of the PSB's performance management arrangements. The first part is the action plan that we're all looking at now. That action plan is now going to be part of the performance framework. The PSB will review that on a regular basis at each of the meetings. The other side of that as well is not a set of performance indicators, but I think there's issues with performance indicators which generally focus on the performance of individual organisations, not really suitable for looking at the performance of partnerships where outcomes are delivered more collectively over a longer period of time. That's probably best captured by population indicators with suitable and comparable data sources, such as those collected by the Office of National Statistics and the Welsh Government. So we've undertaken some initial work to do that. We've looked at existing and established national indicators and measures in use to measure wellbeing across Wales, mainly the national wellbeing indicators, but also what are called the Thriving Places Index for Wales measures as well, which are developed by Data Cymru and the Centre for Thriving Places. So there's quite a large document in your papers, which you can see starting on pages 83 and 84. The main bits of it really are, if I take it all the way through to the end, I think the last page 91 summarizes it all really. So what we have there is a matrix that maps the primary and the secondary drivers in the wellbeing plan against those national measures, against the national indicators and the Thriving Place measures. And I think what we're looking to do really is to try and identify some indicators which we could map against those drivers and then take forward into a population framework. Clearly, the relationships between the drivers and the measures are not always obvious. It is open to some interpretation. So we're going to have to engage further with colleagues across the region, different subject matter experts to try and inform the identification of the population levels in each of those cases. So the PSB delivery group has already reviewed this document. Further work is going to take place by that group on this, and I think what we're looking for really is an agreed set of measures that we can use to take forward to measure those wider population outcomes on a longer term basis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Richard. And I know this is a subject which has been raised on several occasions by scrutiny in terms of measuring our performance and our progress. So it's great to see that we're looking at that, which will of course help us report and update to scrutiny at those regular intervals. So really welcome your support on that. Thank you. Ness?
Yeah, just to say, what we're trying to do with this step is have both the performance management monitoring arrangements for our kind of short-term actions that are in our action plan, which may be annual or looking forward, we may have actions that span a couple of years. But these population level indicators are very much about us being able to track our collective progress against those high level objectives over the sort of medium to long term. And one of the kind of aims, I guess, is if we can identify outcome measures that individual organisations are already using, if there's consistency between them, then it makes sense for us to use those as part of our framework, so that as far as possible we're aligning performance management arrangements at that populational level across the region as a whole. So we can report as a PSB, but also we can ensure that consistency with our partners as individual organisations. So I think this is quite an exciting piece of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Ness. Keith?
Yep, thanks. So really interested to see what's going on in this space. I'm just wondering about how, picking up on the latter point, so performance management is different from shifting outcomes. And I'm just wondering about how you attribute a change in outcomes to the work which is being undertaken by the PSBs, and whether there's been any logic model work done to link activities happening in the PSB space or sponsored by the PSB with process measures, then with outcome measures, which because outcome measures will change over time as a result of a number of different factors, and only one of those factors will be PSB activity. So it's understanding how we can attribute PSB activity to a shift in outcome, and how much of that shift in outcome is actually as a consequence of what the PSB has done.
Yeah, and I think that is the absolute challenge, isn't it? I mean, it's a challenge for individual organisations, but when you bring the PSB together and see that, you know, the contribution we make as a partnership as a whole, this is the point that scrutiny has kind of levelled at us over a number of years. So at this point, I think agreeing a set of outcome measures that make sense in the context of existing plans, which in many cases for us in any event is a medium term or a long term plan for the wellbeing plan, but individual organisation plans too. And then really trying to map that back to, okay, how do the actions that we're taking map to that outcome, that population outcome measure? And I think it will always be a challenge, because how do you quantify in any outcome measure the direct contribution that any individual organisation or a collection of organisations has made in an empirical way? So I think that, you know, that is going to be an ongoing challenge for us, Keith. But this is a starting point on that journey.
No, I agree with you, and that's where the logic model approach is helpful, because it identifies specific actions which are being undertaken in the partnership space. It allows you to quantify the impact of those actions and then to compare that with shift in the outcome of which those are directed. So I think we're probably talking about the same thing and agreeing. It's just I'm not seeing that approach reflected in the paper. So it may be that's what's going on. We can pick it up outside.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, thank you both. And thank you, Richard. Okay, so we'll go to item 8, which is for information only, and that's an update on the future work programme. So we have the Area Planning Board annual report and an update on GP clusters. So that's just for information. And then finally, as Ness referred to earlier, just to advise on the dates of the next meeting, which are Thursday, the 11th of January, and following that, the 25th of April, 2024, both to be held at 3 p.m. So it just remains, in conclusion, for me to thank you all very much for your contributions today. It's great to hear and updates on each individual step and all the work that's going on. And with your endorsement, I'd like to see us do this at every public service board meeting, so that we can keep a close track of how the steps are progressing. So thank you all very much for your involvement and the updates that we've received today. And I look forward to attending the next board meeting where we look at what progress has been made. So thank you all very much. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I shall see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.